Hi, I'm Ella. When my brother Travis moved into Grandma's lake house, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just him, being his usual loud self, throwing parties every weekend, live streaming everything for his thousands of followers. It was all show, all excitement, and I stayed quietly in the background, as I always did. But there was something Grandma had left behind, something everyone else ignored. A clause in her trust that nobody read, a detail buried in words so small and so precise, it would change everything. I remember the morning I found it, sitting at my small kitchen table, coffee in hand, the early light spilling through the window. I finally opened the trust documents. My heart beat fast, not with excitement, but with disbelief. Nights only counted if you were there with your legal spouse. I felt a strange mix of hope and fear, because that meant I could do this. I could finally claim what Grandma had wanted all along. Travis had always been the golden child. Everyone adored him. Everyone forgave his mistakes. And I had been quiet, overlooked, the one who did things right but never noticed. I never argued. I never demanded attention. I never thought about revenge. But this wasn't revenge. This was just fairness. I glanced at the calendar. A Tuesday morning. Perfect. Quiet. The county clerk would barely notice. 7 years of love, commitment, and patience. My boyfriend, soon to be my husband, smiled at me. "Are you ready?" he whispered, and I nodded. I wasn't nervous, not in the way people think. I was calm, almost peaceful, because for the first time, I knew the truth. Grandma's wish wasn't about wealth or bragging rights or social media followers. It was about love. It was about the people who truly lived in her house, who filled it with care, who treated it like home. That day, I didn't just sign papers. I didn't just make a legal claim. I honored her memory. And I knew, somehow, that she would be proud of the quiet sister who finally spoke with action instead of words. Grandma's house had always been a sanctuary. The way it sat on the Maine coastline, the sun glinting off the water in the mornings, the smell of salt and pine mingling in the air, it was magical. Growing up, it felt like our little escape from the chaos of everyday life. Travis and I spent summers there, building sandcastles on the beach, exploring the woods behind the house, and sitting on the porch in silence, watching the water ripple at sunset. But even then, there was a pattern. Travis was loud, fearless, and always center stage. He could charm anyone, family, neighbors, even strangers passing through. I, on the other hand, was quiet. I watched. I listened. I helped. I did the chores no one noticed. I never complained. It wasn't a bad life. It was simply who I was. I found comfort in details, organizing Grandma's books, arranging fresh flowers, making sure the house felt like a home. Travis's friends were a constant presence, even back then. He brought them along to everything: sleepovers, barbecues, boat rides. They laughed too loudly, ran through the house, spilled juice on the floors, and Grandma, always smiling, would wave it off. I kept to myself, smiling politely, making sure everything remained in order. Sometimes I envied him. Sometimes I wished I could be that bold, but I never allowed jealousy to root truth. Grandma noticed. She always noticed. While everyone else saw Travis as the golden child, she saw both of us. She would give me a quiet smile, a knowing look that said, "I see you. I know your heart." And I believed her. I believed in her judgment, her wisdom, and her love. That was why when she passed, and the news about her trust came out, I trusted that everything would work itself out, though I didn't expect it to become so complicated. After her funeral, Travis immediately moved into the house. He called it his new era. Social media exploded with photos, live streams, and videos. He invited all his friends, hosted parties every weekend, and made sure everyone knew he was in charge. 200,000 followers watched him in real time. The house was filled with laughter, music, and chaos, but none of it felt like the home Grandma had loved. I stayed away at first. I didn't want to intrude. I didn't want to seem petty or jealous. I reminded myself that this was his time in the spotlight, that everyone loved him, and that I would always be the quiet one. But slowly, I noticed the cracks. The parties were loud and reckless. People trampled the gardens, left trash on the beach, and ignored the house itself. The water, docked with floating tiki bars and swim-up platforms. Beautiful, yes, but designed for entertainment, not comfort. It felt empty, hollow. And that's when I remembered something Grandma had always said to me. A house is alive when it's loved, Claire, not when it's shown off. Her words echoed in my mind every time I thought about what was happening, and I realized, for the first time, that Grandma had left something in writing, a little secret she trusted me to understand. I began revisiting the trust documents. At first, I was just curious, but then I read the line that changed everything. Nights only count if you are there with your legal spouse. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the Maine coastline, imagining Travis partying in Ibiza while I quietly processed the truth. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about money. It was about honoring Grandma's wishes. It was about the love she wanted in her home, the people who truly lived there, who nurtured it. And I realized that while Travis had the volume, I had the substance. I had the life she had hoped would fill the house. I called my boyfriend, the man I had been with for 7 years. He had been my anchor through quiet storms and small victories. I told him softly, "It's time," I told him. He didn't hesitate. He knew exactly what I meant. Tuesday morning, quiet clerk, just the 2 of us. A signature here, a signature there, and we would begin a journey that honored love, patience, and dedication. I spent the next few weeks preparing. I documented everything carefully, counting each night, making logs, ensuring every detail could stand up in the eyes of the law. It was meticulous work, quiet and patient. I didn't boast about it. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted no confrontation, no drama. This was our secret and our chance to honor Grandma properly. Meanwhile, Travis continued in his whirlwind spectacle. The house rang with laughter and music, friends sprawled across the lawn, boats floated in the water, and every weekend brought a new spectacle. Occasionally, I would watch from a distance, a quiet observer. It stung sometimes, I won't lie, seeing what could have been, seeing him take the chaos as triumph. But I reminded myself, the clause, the love, the patience, the principle, that was what mattered. And slowly, I began to realize that this journey wasn't just about the house. It was about me, about the quiet sister who always stayed in the background, about the person who loved, who cared, who noticed the little things. For years, I had let others take the spotlight. For years, I had let my patience be mistaken for weakness. But this time, I could finally act in a way that felt right, honest, and true.
At first, it was subtle. Little things that didn't seem like much, but they added up. Travis would call me to check on the house while his friends ran amok. He didn't mean any harm, but there was an arrogance in his voice, a belief that everything was his by default. "Claire, just come over for 5 minutes, see if the decorations are okay," he said one Saturday morning while I was preparing my logs. I sighed softly. "I'm busy today," I replied calmly. "I'll come another time." He laughed. "You're always so serious. Lighten up. This is the new era." I smiled politely, but inside, a quiet flame of frustration grew. He didn't understand. He never tried. The house wasn't about the spectacle. It was about the life within it, the care, the memories, the love that made it home. But every word he spoke made it seem like none of that mattered. I began noticing the small damages, a broken window latch from a careless friend, stains on the carpet. The kitchen counters were rarely cleaned after the parties. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront. I simply documented. Every minor damage, every night he wasn't at the house with a spouse, every extravagance that had no purpose but showmanship. It was strange, the emotions I felt during this time. I didn't hate him. I didn't even envy him, at least not in the bitter sense. I felt a strange mixture of pity, frustration, and sadness. How could someone so loved and so talented fail to see the very thing Grandma valued most? I remember one afternoon vividly. Travis was showing a friend the new swim-up bar he had installed in the lake. "Look at this. I spent $60,000 just to make this place epic. Everyone's gonna love it," he exclaimed, laughing and slapping the bar with his palm. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, keeping my distance. "It's impressive," I murmured, my voice barely carried, but I couldn't stop the tight knot in my stomach. Every dollar he spent, every effort was irrelevant to the one thing that counted: nights with love and care. I knew it would all be meaningless in the end. Meanwhile, I continued my quiet preparations. Each day I counted nights meticulously. I recorded every stay at our small apartment, every night we spent together, every detail required to satisfy the trust clause. It was painstaking, but I found peace in it. It was the first time in years that I felt in control, the first time I felt that quiet strength rise within me. But of course, life has a way of complicating even the most careful plans. One evening, my phone rang. It was Grandma's lawyer. My heart skipped a beat. "Claire," he said cautiously, "I just wanted to confirm, are you aware of the party schedules at the lake house? There may be some conflicts regarding the trust." I felt a pang of anxiety, but I kept my voice steady. "I understand, sir. I'm keeping detailed records of every night I stay at the property with my husband. Everything is documented." "Good," he replied, hesitating slightly. "Just make sure all paperwork is accurate. Travis is very vocal online, and people are watching." I hung up and exhaled slowly. The tension began to grow. Travis was not only careless, he was visible, loud, public. Every post, every video was another reminder that the house, in the eyes of the world, looked like it was his. And yet, I knew the truth lay in the fine print, the quiet nights, and the patience we had cultivated. I began to worry about slip-ups. Would something go wrong? Would he suddenly decide to involve lawyers, or friends, or the media? My mind raced, but I refused to panic. I reminded myself, this was not about proving him wrong in public. This was about honoring Grandma's wishes, about doing right quietly, correctly, patiently. Then the first small confrontation happened. I was at the lake house one Friday evening, quietly inspecting the kitchen after a weekend party. Travis walked in, clearly surprised. "Claire, what are you doing here?" he asked, tone half curious, half irritated. "I wanted to check a few things," I said softly, "just making sure everything is in order." He frowned. "This is my place now. You don't need to be doing that." I looked at him steadily. "It's still Grandma's house," I said simply, "and she wanted it lived in and loved, not just shown off." He laughed dismissively. "Come on, Claire, you're always so serious. You're missing the fun part of life. Don't take everything so literally." I smiled faintly. "Some things are meant to be literal." He didn't respond, and I quietly walked out. But the tension lingered. He was beginning to notice that I was not as passive as he assumed, that I was quietly watching, quietly documenting, quietly preparing. Over the following weeks, small incidents began to accumulate. Friends complained about my presence, subtly questioning my sneaky ways. Travis would make jokes about the obsessive sister, unaware that each comment, each laugh, each moment of arrogance was strengthening my resolve. And then, one night, he almost discovered the extent of my preparation. I had returned to the house after he had gone out for a party. I was reviewing my logs, ensuring every night, every date, every detail was perfectly recorded. Suddenly, the door creaked. I froze. It was him. He had come home early. "Claire, what are you doing here?" I held the papers to my chest. "Just checking some things." He stepped closer, curiosity in his eyes. "Are you spying on me?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm honoring Grandma's wishes, that's all." He laughed awkwardly, not quite meeting my gaze. "You're always so careful. Why? Don't you trust me?"
I hesitated, feeling the tension rise, but my voice remained calm. It's not about trust, it's about respect and care and following her instructions. He looked away, uncomfortable. For a moment there was silence, And in that silence, I realized how much I had grown. I was no longer the quiet girl who simply watched. I was someone who could act, who could honor her grandmother's legacy, and who could do it with calm strength. The following weeks brought more subtle clashes. Travis began noticing my increased presence. He would post online, subtly mocking my obsessive habits. "The quiet sister is at it again," he joked to his followers. But each time I reminded myself of the clause. Every post, every joke, every attempt to belittle me was irrelevant. The truth was in the nights we spent, in the care we showed, in the love we nurtured. It wasn't easy. There were days I felt doubt creeping in. Did we have enough nights? Would he try to contest the legal details? What if a single error ruined everything? My heart ached at the thought, but I breathed deeply. This was a test of patience and quiet perseverance, and I had learned, over years of being the observer, that patience often yields the strongest victories. I started imagining the moment we would finally present the evidence, the documented nights, the marriage certificate, the logs. It wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be dramatic, it would be simple, quiet, and undeniable, and that thought gave me strength. By the time Labor Day weekend arrived, the tension was almost tangible. Travis had no idea that 427 consecutive nights had been logged, quietly, patiently, methodically. He had spent his days in Ibiza, hosting parties, ignoring the details that mattered, and I, the quiet sister, had turned those details into a plan that would finally honor Grandma's wishes. It was during this time that the last small confrontations happened. Friends and neighbors would make casual comments. "Claire, are you sure you belong here?" Or, "Travis is so lucky he gets to live in a house like this." Each comment stung, but it also reminded me why I was doing this. I wasn't competing for attention. I was preserving the home as it was meant to be preserved, and I was finally ready to step out of the shadows. The morning we were ready to act, the air was crisp and calm. There was no fanfare, no one watching, no social media attention, just the quiet promise of doing what was right. I held my husband's hand as we walked into the county clerk's office. The smell of polished wood and old paper surrounded us. Everything about this moment felt sacred, simple, and deliberate. The clerk looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" I smiled back, keeping my voice soft but steady. "We're here to officially file our marriage documents and certify our residency for the property. We'd like to finalize what Grandma wanted." The clerk nodded, glancing at the paperwork we had brought. "Everything looks in order. Congratulations, you two. This seems very thorough." I exhaled slowly. Inside, a quiet relief washed over me. All those nights, all those careful records had led to this. No shouting, no confrontation, just patience and attention to detail. For the first time, I truly felt that the weight of responsibility had lifted, replaced with a calm sense of justice and honor. After the signatures were complete, I felt a small thrill of satisfaction, not in a gloating sense, never that, but in the quiet assurance that Grandma's wishes were now firmly in motion. For years I had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Now the quiet sister had acted, calmly and correctly, to claim what was rightfully hers. We returned home that afternoon, carrying only the documents, a few personal belongings, and a renewed sense of purpose. I set the papers carefully on the kitchen table. My husband sat beside me, eyes soft with pride. "It's done," he whispered. "You did it." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief, yes. Anticipation, yes. But also a profound sadness. This wasn't about winning over my brother or proving a point. It was about preserving a memory, a home, a family legacy. It was about honoring love over spectacle. And then, as if on cue, Travis returned. He walked in, laughing loudly as always, talking about his latest party, his latest followers, his latest plans. And then he froze. His eyes fell on the documents neatly stacked on the table. Claire, he began slowly. His voice, usually so confident, sounded uncertain. What's this? I looked at him calmly, and my voice was steady, measured. It's what Grandma wanted. His brow furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. Wait, what do you mean? I gestured toward the documents. I read the trust. Nights only count if spent at the house with your legal spouse, so we logged every night we stayed there. Every night you were away or alone didn't count. This is why the deed is now updated in our favor. For a moment there was silence, the kind of silence that fills a room and presses gently against your chest. Travis's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, seeing the calmness in our demeanor, the certainty in our expressions, and the evidence on the table. I don't understand, he stammered, but I spent so much. Yes, I said softly, I know. You spent money, you hosted parties, you live-streamed, but this house was never about showmanship. It was about love. Grandma made it very clear. His shoulders slumped slightly, and for the first time in my life, I saw doubt in Travis. Not arrogance, not confidence, not superiority, but doubt. A realization that his assumptions, his self-assuredness, had blinded him to the truth all along. He looked down at the documents again, flipping through them as if reading the words for the first time. You actually counted every night? I nodded. Every single one, carefully, methodically, not for revenge, not to prove anything, just to honor her wishes. His lips parted, but no words came out. He stepped back, suddenly aware that the game he thought he was playing had already ended quietly and without fanfare. And in that moment, something unexpected happened. Instead of anger, instead of confrontation, I felt a deep empathy for him. I saw the disappointment, the shock, the subtle shame, and I realized how little purpose resentment would serve. I reached out softly. It's okay, Travis, you didn't understand, but that's all right. Grandma's house was never meant to punish anyone. It was meant to nurture, and now we can honor her together if you choose to help instead of just watching. His eyes softened slightly, but pride lingered. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, I guess I was too focused on the wrong things. Yes, I said gently, we all can be, but the important part is recognizing it and moving forward. That's what really matters.
That weekend, we returned to the lake house, and I began implementing small changes. Not flashy parties, not extravagant shows, just simple acts of care. I arranged the flowers, cleaned the kitchen, and repaired small damages that had been ignored. Every action was quiet, deliberate, and intentional. Travis helped, albeit reluctantly at first, moving slowly through the house as if seeing it for the first time. And then, something remarkable happened. He began noticing details I had always cared about. The porch looks really nice, he said one afternoon, almost shyly. You really paid attention to all this. I smiled softly. I always did. I just didn't make a show of it. He nodded, and for the first time, I felt a true sense of reconciliation forming. Not forced, not dramatic, just natural. The house, which had been a battleground in my mind, began to feel like the sanctuary it had always been. But the legal confirmation was not just symbolic. It was the evidence that ensured Grandma's wishes would be honored, regardless of anyone's assumptions, arrogance, or social media presence. We had followed every rule, every line of text, every detail in her trust. And because of that, the house's future was secure, rooted in love and patience, rather than noise and showmanship. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I sat on the porch with Travis. He was quieter than usual, watching the water reflect the warm orange glow. I didn't realize what Grandma really wanted, he said slowly. I nodded. It's easy to miss the quiet things when you're focused on being seen. He smiled faintly. You always notice the quiet things. I guess that's why she trusted you. A soft warmth filled my chest. I realized then that this wasn't just about the house. It was about understanding, about seeing the true value of love, care, and attention. And for the first time, I felt that Travis might truly understand it too. The rest of the weekend passed without conflict. Friends and family who had once whispered doubts now saw the calmness in the house. The parties were smaller, quieter, but filled with genuine laughter and connection. Every night spent in the house with care now counted not just on paper, but in the hearts of those present. I realized something profound. Victory doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and deliberate. And when it arrives with integrity. After that weekend, the lake house finally felt like it was breathing again. It wasn't the loud chaos of parties or social media stunts that gave it life. It was quiet moments, the smell of fresh flowers, the soft creak of the porch floor under our feet, the water lapping gently against the dock. I realized how much I had missed this, the subtle rhythms of a home filled with care rather than spectacle. Travis was quieter now, more reflective. He helped with small tasks without boasting or drawing attention. He repaired the broken latch I had been concerned about, straightened furniture, and even prepared breakfast one morning. It wasn't dramatic. There were no big apologies, no speeches, just small, deliberate acts. And somehow they carried more weight than any argument ever could. I remember one evening, sitting by the lake, Travis beside me, watching the sun set. "Claire," he said softly, almost hesitant, "I guess I didn't understand what Grandma really wanted. I was focused on the wrong things." I nodded. "It's okay, Travis. We all get caught up sometimes. What matters is realizing it and moving forward." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You always notice the quiet things. I guess that's why she trusted you." A soft warmth filled my chest. I realized then that this wasn't just about the house. It was about understanding, about seeing the true value of love, care, and attention. And for the first time, I felt that Travis might truly understand it too. The next few weeks were filled with small but meaningful moments. Friends who had once whispered doubts began visiting again, this time noticing the difference. The house had warmth, a sense of order, and a quiet happiness that had been missing. Travis no longer posted live videos of every gathering. Instead, he participated quietly, sharing smiles, laughter, and genuine connection with those around him. I felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't about proving him wrong. It wasn't about winning. It was about doing what Grandma wanted, filling her home with love, care, and life. And for the first time, I realized that this quiet patience, this careful attention to detail, had been a strength all along. One evening, my husband and I sat on the porch, watching the moon reflect on the water. "You did it, Claire," he said softly. "You honored her in the way she would have wanted." I smiled, feeling a lump in my throat. "It wasn't just me," I said. "It was all of us who cared. And I think Travis is learning too." He nodded. "Yes, and that's more important than anything else. The house is finally alive again." Over the next months, I noticed subtle changes in Travis. He would ask about the garden, the flowers, or the small repairs that needed attention. He began to notice the quiet beauty in the house, the small things that I had always cared about, and he started to appreciate them, not for show, not for social media, but simply because they were there, nurturing the home. One evening, he approached me while I was arranging flowers on the kitchen counter. "Claire," he said softly, "I want to help, really help this time." I paused, looking at him carefully. "You don't have to prove anything, Travis. Just be present. Care. That's enough." He nodded slowly. "I know. I want to do right by Grandma. And by you, too."
It was a quiet, heartfelt moment. No grand gestures, no dramatic confessions, just understanding, recognition, and a willingness to grow.
I realized then that the real resolution wasn't about the deed, the legal documents, or the nights counted. It was about the relationships, the respect, and the care we had cultivated. The house had become a symbol, yes, but it was also a classroom. It taught us patience, humility, and the quiet power of consistency. The neighbors and friends who had once whispered behind our backs began to notice the change too. They commented on how peaceful the house felt, how natural and warm the gatherings had become. It wasn't loud or flashy, but there was a depth, a sincerity that hadn't existed before. And in those small observations, I found a sense of fulfillment. Travis and I began spending more time together, not in competition or conflict, but in shared purpose. We would walk along the shoreline, noticing the subtle details of the trees, the sand, the gentle ripples in the water. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we were silent, but the silence was no longer uncomfortable. It was calm, reflective, and full of understanding. One evening, I found myself sitting on the dock alone, the water stretching endlessly before me. I thought about the journey we had taken, the quiet preparation, the careful documentation, the tension, the confrontations, and finally, the turning point. I realized that every single moment had led me here, to this calm, to this sense of inner peace. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't triumph over my brother. It was honor, love, patience. And in that moment, I felt a connection not only to Grandma, but to the essence of what she had always wanted, a home lived in and loved, not displayed for the world to see. Over the following months, life at the lake house became routine in the most beautiful way. We had small gatherings, celebrated birthdays quietly, and spent evenings simply watching the water. Travis no longer tried to dominate the house or seek attention through social media. He had learned, slowly but surely, the value of quiet care and presence. And I learned too. I realized that patience, consistency, and quiet strength could achieve more than any confrontation, argument, or loud display ever could. I had spent years being overlooked, and now, in a calm, deliberate way, I had honored Grandma, nurtured the home, and restored a sense of balance to our family. One day, Travis turned to me while we were arranging flowers. "Claire, thank you," he said softly, "for everything, for being patient, for teaching me even without meaning to." I smiled. It wasn't about teaching, it was about doing right, and I think you've learned too.
He nodded, a quiet acknowledgement passing between us. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of genuine reconciliation, not forced, not dramatic, just real, simple, and heartfelt. I realized then that the lake house had never been about the money, the parties, or the attention. It had always been about love, presence, and care. And by honoring those values, we had restored not only the home, but the bond between siblings that had been strained for years. And so the house finally breathed again. Every room held warmth, every corner held care. Even Travis, once the loud golden child, had learned to see the beauty in quiet attention. I had learned that patience, integrity, and quiet action could achieve more than any argument, any competition, or any loud display ever could. For the first time, I understood Grandma's wisdom completely. She had trusted me, not because I was loud or confident, but because I saw the life in her home, because I cared, patiently and quietly. And now that life was thriving, not in spite of me, but because of me, and because of us together. Sitting on the porch one early morning, I watched the sunlight shimmer across the water. The lake house felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. The laughter was softer, the moments slower, but each one carried warmth, love, and care. It was peaceful, and for the first time, I felt a complete sense of belonging. I thought about Grandma and her wisdom, how she had always trusted me quietly, how she had always seen the small things, the details, the love behind the work. She had known that patience and care could accomplish what arrogance and noise never could, and I realized she had left more than a house, she had left a lesson. Travis came out quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to me, his eyes soft with a mix of humility and newfound understanding. "Thanks, Claire," he said simply, "for everything, for showing me what really matters." I smiled and took a sip. "It's not about thanks," I said softly. "It's about learning, noticing, and living with care. That's what Grandma wanted. That's what really matters." We sat in silence for a while, letting the calm settle over us. There was no need for drama, no need for apologies, no need to relive the tension of the past. Everything had been addressed quietly, deliberately, with patience and integrity. The house, the memories, and even our relationship had been restored gently, without fanfare, but with profound meaning. I thought back to the nights we had logged, the careful attention to detail and the quiet perseverance. I realized that life often rewards patience and integrity even when it seems unnoticed. The victories that matter most are the ones earned without loud declarations, without boasting, without the need to prove oneself to the world.
Sometimes the strongest moments in life are quiet. They happen in preparation, in consistency, in attention to the small things that others overlook. I had learned that lesson in spades, and more importantly, I had lived it, shared it, and seen it take root in the most unexpected places. My brother, the house, and even in myself. The lake reflected the rising sun, the water calm and clear, like a mirror of the peace I felt inside. I knew that whatever the future held, the house would remain a place of love, a home lived in and cared for, just as Grandma had intended. And even beyond the walls of the house, I understood that this lesson about patience, quiet strength, and true love was something I could carry into every aspect of life. Travis nudged my shoulder lightly. "So, what now?" he asked with a small smile. I looked at him, feeling the warmth and connection we had rebuilt. "Now?" I said softly. "Now we live here. We care for this place, and we remember what really matters: love, patience, and presence. That's it." He nodded, and together we stood on the porch, looking out over the water. The lake was calm, the sun rising slowly, and a gentle breeze ruffled the trees. I felt the quiet power of all those small moments, the nights spent, the care given, the patience held. I felt the legacy of Grandma's love alive in every corner of the house and in every heartbeat of our family. Sometimes, I thought, life doesn't hand you victories with noise or applause. Sometimes it's a quiet, steady path. You walk it slowly, patiently, and one day you look back and realize that everything fell into place, not because you shouted louder or acted brashly, but because you honored what truly mattered. And in that moment, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the patience cultivated, for the love that had quietly guided us. I realized that the house, the lake, and even the struggles we faced were part of a bigger picture. They had taught us to value integrity, to notice the small details, and to nurture what was truly important.